McHale's Navy, 1962-1966, remains one of the most iconic TV comedies of the 1960s, winning over audiences with its hilarious mix of military life mischief and unforgettable characters. Starring Ernest Borgnine as the quick-witted Lieutenant Commander McHale and his ragtag crew, the show became a timeless favorite blending humor with heart. But after the series ended, where did the cast go? Some continued to shine in Hollywood, others chose quieter paths, and a few left behind legacies that fans still celebrate today. In 2025, viewers are still curious about the beloved stars of McHale's Navy. Join us as we explore what really happened to the cast, how their careers unfolded, what milestones they achieved, and how they are remembered more than 6 decades later. Ernest Borgnine was born on January 24, 1917, and became Lieutenant Commander McHale in 1962 at 45 years old, a role that cemented him as the rebellious yet endearing heart of McHale's Navy. McHale's charm lay in his ability to bend rules while protecting his crew, a reflection of Borgnine's own real-life Navy background. But behind that was a childhood marked by harshness and humiliation. Born to poor Italian immigrants in Connecticut, he grew up amid ridicule for his accent and volatile home life, retreating into toughness and humor to survive. His career seemed unstoppable after his Oscar-winning turn in Marty, 1955, yet the reality was darker. Box office failures plagued him, and he was shunned for years by studios wary of his temper and unpredictable behavior. On set, Borgnine had a reputation for berating co-stars, and his infamous 32-day marriage to singer Ethel Merman spiraled into public scandal, with both lobbing bitter insults in interviews. He wrestled with alcoholism, stormy affairs, and estrangement from his children, while rumors swirled of his domineering personality and secret vendettas against actors who challenged him. Friends recalled his tendency to sabotage colleagues he viewed as competition, masking it with his trademark laugh. Personal grief weighed on him: 2 failed marriages, deaths of close friends, and a gnawing sense of isolation. Yet his career revived with surprising turns, from gritty roles in The Wild Bunch to beloved voice work as Mermaid Man in SpongeBob SquarePants. When Borgnine died on July 8, 2012, in Los Angeles at 95 of renal failure, he left behind a sprawling estate worth around $15 million, including Hollywood properties, luxury cars, and royalties. His legacy was that of a man adored by fans, but feared by many colleagues, a paradox of warmth and darkness that continues to shadow his reputation. Tim Conway was born on December 15, 1933, and at 28 years old in 1962, became Ensign Charles Parker, the bumbling yet lovable second-in-command, whose slapstick antics defined McHale's Navy's comedic heart. His Parker was pure chaos, wrapped in innocence, winning audiences through endless pratfalls. But Conway's childhood was no laughing matter. He grew up in Depression-era Ohio, often mocked for his stutter and small stature, hiding behind humor to deflect cruelty. His career, though eventually legendary, was riddled with humiliating failures, a string of canceled series from Rango to the infamous Ace Crawford Private Eye, which collapsed so spectacularly in 1983 that critics declared his career dead. On set, his improvisations delighted audiences, but infuriated directors who accused him of undermining scripts, and his insistence on ad-libbing made him infamous as impossible to control. Off-screen, Conway wrestled with personal chaos. His first marriage ended bitterly, with accusations of neglect and infidelity, while his second marriage spiraled into scandal when his daughter sued his wife over control of his medical care, a bitter public legal war that exposed the fractures in his family. He was rumored to have struggled with gambling, and colleagues recalled his manipulative streak, charming fans while slyly undermining rivals. His darkest professional humiliation came when multiple pilots were scrapped after only weeks, branding him as poison for prime time in the 1970s, forcing him into supporting roles. In later years, tragedy struck as his health declined from normal pressure, hydrocephalus, leaving him bedridden and silenced while his family fought bitterly over his care. Conway died on May 14, 2019 in Los Angeles at 85, leaving behind an estate valued around $15 million, including property royalties and decades of residuals. His legacy remains split between the image of a beloved clown and the reality of a man whose laughter often masked turbulence, bitterness, and battles that even comedy could not disguise. Joe Flynn was born on November 8, 1924, and stepped into the role of Captain Wallace B. Binghamton in 1962, at 38 years old, embodying the shrill, flustered superior whose constant failures became the comedic foil to McHale's cunning crew. Viewers loved Binghamton's panic and paranoia, yet Flynn's childhood in Youngstown was defined by constant mockery. His wiry build and squeaky voice made him a target of cruel jokes, driving him to mask insecurity with biting wit. Early in his career, he faced repeated rejections and humiliating failures, struggling through short-lived TV roles and stage obscurity before McHale's Navy gave him stability. But fame exposed his darker edges. Flynn was notorious for his acid-tongue gambling sprees and obsessive drive for control. He openly feuded with producers and at one point nearly lost his Disney contract after being accused of unprofessional outbursts. He harbored political ambitions, running unsuccessfully for the Ohio Senate in the 1950s, a campaign marred by rumors of financial irregularities and reckless spending. His personal life mirrored the chaos. His marriage was strained by rumored affairs, and friends whispered of violent arguments at home. Flynn's biggest career humiliation came when he was passed over for lead roles in multiple Disney films, fueling his bitterness and gambling habits. In Hollywood, whispers spread of his desperation to remain relevant, with his name often tied to petty lawsuits and behind-the-scenes power plays. His sudden death on July 19, 1974, at just 49, shocked the industry. After suffering a heart attack, he drowned in his Beverly Hills swimming pool, leaving a career abruptly cut short. At the time, his estate was modest, estimated at only $1 million, mostly from Disney contracts and TV syndication. Posthumous releases, like The Rescuers, kept his name alive, but his reputation remained haunted by whispers of wasted potential, unfulfilled ambition, and a man whose demons drowned him as surely as the water in which he died. Carl Ballantine, born Meyer Kessler on September 27, 1917 in Chicago, played torpedo man Lester Gruber in McHale's Navy in 1962 at the age of 45. On-screen Gruber was the resident trickster, a wheeler-dealer constantly hustling, plotting, and scheming, yet never malicious enough to truly turn audiences against him. He was the archetype of the comic con man, whose misadventures softened the war setting with humor. Born into a Jewish immigrant family racked by financial instability, young Meyer faced taunts from classmates, endured years of ridicule for his looks and name, and learned early to mask pain with wisecracks. When his career began, he reinvented himself as the amazing Ballantine, the first magician to deliberately botch tricks for comedy. But many in the magic community accused him of disrespecting the craft, labeling him a fraud who corrupted tradition. In Hollywood, he cultivated a reputation as unreliable. Producers complained about his drinking, while co-stars whispered of his gambling addiction, which in the 1960s left him deeply in debt to unsavory figures. He often manipulated colleagues, pushing himself into roles by exploiting friendships and clashed with directors who accused him of derailing sets with self-indulgent ad-libbing. His marriage to actress Cecile Cabot was tempestuous, marked by screaming matches, infidelity rumors, and long separations that scarred their children, who would later admit to being frightened of his mercurial moods. Though celebrated for guest appearances on countless shows, Valentine faced repeated humiliations when pilots he headlined failed spectacularly, the biggest being a 1970s variety project that critics tore apart as chaotic and unwatchable, effectively ending his chances at stardom. In his later years, he became increasingly isolated, battling heart disease, arthritis, and bitterness, as his contemporaries surpassed him in fame and fortune. Yet in death, his legacy became strangely burnished. Carl Ballantine died on November 3, 2009, at 92 in Hollywood Hills, California, reportedly of natural causes, leaving behind an estate valued between $3 to $5 million, built largely from decades of steady but unglamorous TV and stage work. Billy Sands. Born William F. Sands on January 6, 1911, in Bergen, New York, entered McHale's Navy in 1962 at the age of 51 as Harrison Tinkerbell, the wiry mechanic whose motor oil-stained hands and razor-sharp wisecracks brought levity to every scene. Tinker was scrappy, loyal, and perpetually on the edge of chaos, embodying the blue-collar soul of the PT-73 crew. But the man behind the character lived a far bleaker life. Sands was raised in crushing poverty during the Great Depression, losing his father early and carrying the burden of supporting his mother. Mocked as a child for his nervous stammer and frail physique, he developed the rapid-fire comic timing that would later define him, but also a deep insecurity that never left. His career breakthrough came on the Phil Silvers Show, yet he spent most of his life in the shadow of leading men resigned to playing funny sidekicks. Behind the laughter, Sands was plagued by destructive habits. He was a compulsive gambler, often losing entire paychecks at racetracks and underground card games, and his heavy drinking earned him a reputation as volatile and unreliable on set. Producers grumbled about his tardiness, co-stars avoided his temper, and his sharp tongue led to explosive fights with colleagues. He married briefly, but the union disintegrated in scandal after allegations of infidelity and emotional abuse, leaving him alone and bitter. His greatest professional humiliation came in the late 1960s, when a touring stage production he headlined collapsed mid-run after critics excoriated his sloppy, drunken performances. The financial losses left him nearly bankrupt. By the 1970s, Sands's health was deteriorating rapidly. Years of chain-smoking and alcohol abuse left him battling emphysema and lung cancer, while loneliness consumed his final days. He died on August 27, 1984 in Los Angeles at the age of 73 from lung cancer, penniless and nearly forgotten by an industry that once applauded him. At the time of his death, his estate was worth under $1 million, little more than personal effects and debts. A grim reminder that the actor who once filled screens with manic vitality died in obscurity, leaving behind not a fortune, but a tragic Hollywood cautionary tale. Yoshio Yoda, born March 31, 1934, took on the role of Fujiwara Fuji Kobayashi in 1962, at age 28. The Japanese POW turned unlikely ally of McHale's misfit crew, a character who shocked audiences with his warmth and humor in an era still steeped in wartime prejudice. Fuji's presence softened the edges of war comedy and challenged stereotypes, making Yoda an unexpected cultural bridge. But Yoda's life was forged in shadows long before Hollywood. Born in Tokyo during the rise of militarism, he endured bombing raids, as a child saw friends killed, and grew up internalizing the shame of defeat. In Hollywood, his accent and foreignness became both his brand and his curse. While fans adored Fuji, Yoda, privately, resented the typecasting that kept him in comic roles. His greatest professional humiliation came when a spin-off built around Fuji collapsed in development after studio executives decided America wasn't ready for an Asian lead. Insiders whispered about bitter fights with producers over pay disparities and the indignity of being sidelined during cast promotions. Though publicly scandal-free, he struggled with loneliness, maintaining an enigmatic personal life with very little revealed about his marriage or possible children. Hollywood doors slammed shut, and Yoda retreated, reinventing himself in corporate America as James Yoda at Toyota. Yet even there, he bore invisible wounds of rejection and identity conflict. He poured energy into civic groups, but those close to him noted bouts of melancholy and declining health. He died on January 13, 2023, in Fullerton, California, at 88 from natural causes, leaving behind an estate valued at about $2 million, comprising corporate stock, property, and savings. Yoda's story is that of a man who helped reshape American comedy's portrayal of Asians, but who himself never escaped the invisible cage of stereotyping, leaving behind a legacy both groundbreaking and bittersweet. Edson Stroll, born January 6, 1929, stepped into McHale's Navy in 1962 at age 33 as gunner's mate. Virgil Edwards, the strikingly handsome ladies' man who stood out against the buffoonish antics of the PT-73 crew. Virgil was a rare dose of glamour in a wartime sitcom, a character who gave female audiences a reason to watch, and who embodied an effortless mix of charm and vanity. But behind this veneer of easy confidence was a man who had been mocked in his youth. A boy from Chicago whose awkward frame and quiet nature made him the target of constant ridicule until bodybuilding gave him the armor to fight back. Stroll was no Hollywood golden boy. His early promise in the industry was undermined by crippling self-doubt and a streak of arrogance that alienated casting directors. The most devastating blow came when he lost a much-publicized part in Cleopatra after Elizabeth Taylor herself reportedly found him stiff, a humiliation that trailed him for years. Rumors swirled of late-night gambling debts, questionable liaisons with married executives, and even whispered attempts to leverage Navy connections for personal gain. His personal life was just as tumultuous. Romances flared up and burned out, trust was rare, and longtime friends spoke of his manipulative streak. Though he dabbled in painting, voice acting, and teaching, none of it replaced the bright spotlight he had lost. He endured the loss of close relatives, a battle with depression, and the creeping reality that he was remembered more for his physique than his talent. Stroll died of cancer on July 18, 2011, in Marina del Rey, California, at 82, leaving behind an estate of $2 to $3 million, mostly from savvy work as a ship captain and real estate appraiser. His assets included yachts, California property, and a modest collection of art. Even in death, his story remained tinged with irony, a man who wanted immortality as an actor, but secured it only through side careers far from the screen. Bob Hastings, born April 18, 1925, first appeared as Lieutenant Elroy Carpenter in McHale's Navy in 1962 at age 37, slipping into the skin of the nervous, sycophantic aide whose eagerness to please Captain Binghamton made him both laughable and oddly endearing. Fans laughed at Carpenter's gullibility, but Hastings himself grew tired of being trapped in the role of a cowardly yes-man, a typecasting that stung for years. Behind his warm screen presence lay a man shaped by a turbulent childhood in Depression-era Brooklyn, where money was scarce, ridicule from peers was constant, and his natural shyness often made him a target for bullying. Though he later served in the Army Air Corps in Wubwatu, carrying the trauma of seeing death firsthand, Hollywood's grind wore on him, He lost countless auditions to flashier actors and was derided by casting directors as too ordinary. Industry gossip claimed Hastings had a secret mean streak, his polite smile hiding arrogance, and his reputation took a blow after drunkenly berating producers at a party, nearly costing him future work. His greatest career heartbreak came in the mid-1970s when he campaigned hard for a lead role in a new sitcom, but was humiliated after executives dismissed him as forgettable, sending him into a spiral of doubt and bitterness. In his private life, though, married for decades, whispers circulated of brief affairs with co-stars in the world of voice acting, though nothing was ever proven. His children reportedly drifted away, resenting his long absences and his tendency to retreat emotionally even when at home. Tragedy surrounded him, as close friends died young, leaving him increasingly isolated in later years, though he kept working in animation voicing Commissioner Gordon and building a steady income. On June 30, 2014, Hastings died in Burbank, California, of prostate cancer at 89. His estate, estimated between $2 or $3 million, included modest real estate royalties from decades of TV and voice work and careful savings, leaving behind the legacy of a man remembered as steady on the surface but restless and wounded beneath. Gavin MacLeod, born February 28, 1931, took on the role of Seaman Joseph Happy Haynes in McHale's Navy in 1962 at just 31, portraying the awkward bald crewman whose insecurities, sleepwalking antics, and fragile ego gave the ensemble an oddly human edge. Audiences loved Happy's sweetness, but MacLeod himself hated being boxed into a role that mirrored his real-life anxieties about his looks, particularly his early baldness, which plagued him since college. His childhood in Mount Kisco was far from idyllic. Growing up in a household where money was tight, he endured endless teasing from classmates, developing a pattern of hiding sadness behind exaggerated humor. His acting career was at first a cruel uphill climb after McHale's Navy, frustrated by being sidelined and mocked as a bit player. He quit in anger, drinking heavily and sabotaging auditions with his volatility. Hollywood insiders whispered about his mood swings and his reputation for self-pity, and his worst professional disaster came when he lost a major role in a prestigious film due to his unreliability, an incident he later admitted nearly drove him out of the industry. His personal life was a storm. His first marriage collapsed amid accusations of infidelity and shouting matches so loud that neighbors once called the police, while his children from that marriage grew estranged, at times cutting ties altogether. His descent into alcoholism and depression nearly killed him in the late 1970s, until a dramatic religious conversion in the 1980s turned him into a devout Christian preacher and motivational speaker, which softened his reputation and rebuilt his career. Even then, he carried regrets of broken friendships, and the years lost to addiction scars he openly admitted never healed. Later, he achieved redemption with iconic roles on The Mary Tyler Moore Show and The Love Boat. But beneath the fame lingered the shadow of the insecure Happy he once tried to escape. MacLeod died on May 29, 2021 in Palm Desert, California, at age 90. At his death, his estate was worth about $10 million, built on syndication royalties, real estate, and public appearances. Roy Roberts, born March 19, 1906, began playing Admiral Rogers in McHale's Navy in 1963 at age 57, a role that crystallized his image as the no-nonsense authority figure who embodied stern discipline, delivering icy stares and sharp words that perfectly countered McHale's chaotic crew. Rogers was the voice of command, yet fans sensed the comic absurdity in his constant exasperation, a reflection of Roberts's ability to play intimidating men with subtle irony. But off-screen Roberts' life bore the marks of hardship and bitterness. Raised in rural Florida, he grew up in a family ravaged by poverty and the deaths of siblings, shaping his cold, authoritarian demeanor. Hollywood gave him work, but little respect. Though he appeared in over 900 roles, he was rarely more than a background figure, always the judge, banker, or boss, and this fed a growing resentment. He was infamous for his rough edges. Colleagues recalled him belittling younger actors, mocking their lack of discipline, and insiders remembered an incident where he allegedly slapped a co-star during an argument about line delivery, though the studio hushed it up. His greatest career humiliation came in the 1940s, when he lost a major studio contract after a loud, profane confrontation with an executive, an event that haunted him for decades and forced him into the grind of thankless supporting work. His private life mirrored this storm. 2 marriages collapsed under accusations of cruelty, one ex-wife accusing him of keeping mistresses among chorus girls, while his children grew distant, describing him as cold and emotionally unavailable. On May 28, 1975, Roberts died of a heart attack in Los Angeles at age 69, a man whose public face of stern authority hid deep insecurities and personal failures. Unlike stars who cashed in on syndication, Roberts left a relatively small estate, likely under $1 million, mostly tied up in modest property and minimal residuals, a grim reminder of Hollywood's cruelty to character actors who gave everything but were rewarded with little more than obscurity once the lights went out. Henry Beckman, born November 26, 1921, assumed the role of Colonel Douglas Harrigan in 1925, at age 44, transforming the conniving Army officer into a deliciously devious character who schemed against McHale and Binghamton with flair and cunning. Audiences loved to hate Harrigan, and Beckman's sharp delivery made him one of the show's most memorable antagonists. Yet Beckman's real story carried darker undertones. Born in Halifax, Nova Scotia, into a troubled home, he endured a difficult childhood marked by financial instability and an emotionally distant father pushing him toward the discipline of military service. He survived the D-Day invasion during World War II, carrying the invisible scars of trauma that would haunt him in nightmares and in an often volatile temper. His acting career, though prolific, was littered with feuds. Directors described him as talented but manipulative, always trying to rewrite his lines or upstage co-stars. He suffered his most crushing professional defeat when he was abruptly fired from a promising series after clashing with the lead actor over screen time, a blow that damaged his reputation for years. Scandals trailed him, including rumors of affairs with younger actresses, some of which cost him his marriage. He was married twice, both relationships collapsing amid accusations of infidelity, jealousy, and reckless financial decisions. Gambling debts, in particular, drained his finances and forced him into cheap touring theater gigs just to pay bills. Friends confided that Beckman often resented being trapped in television comedy when he craved Shakespearean gravitas, and his bitterness grew as Hollywood aged him out of desirable roles. In his later life, he retreated to Europe, where he attempted to reinvent himself through writing and stage productions, but he remained plagued by paranoia that he was being forgotten. On June 17, 2008, Beckman died in Barcelona, Spain, at age 86. Despite his demons, he left an estate valued at between $2 to $4 million, accumulated through years of television royalties, theater investments, and property holdings. Jane Dulo, born October 13, 1917, stepped into the role of Nurse Molly Turner in 1962 at the age of 45, embodying the brash and man-hungry Navy nurse who relentlessly pursued McHale with a blend of comedic desperation and sharp-witted charm. On screen, Molly was loud, bold, and unapologetically flirtatious, but Jane's performance added a depth that made the character more than a stereotype. She was a woman who longed for affection in a world dominated by men, and audiences laughed at her antics while secretly identifying with her yearning. Yet Jane's childhood in Baltimore was filled with pain and secrecy, raised in an immigrant family, constantly struggling to make ends meet. She was bullied for her accent and appearance, mocked for her weight, and developed an instinct to mask rejection with humor. Her career had flashes of brilliance, but was undercut by bitter setbacks. Though she had honed her craft in vaudeville Hollywood, executives often dismissed her as too abrasive, too unconventional, and by the late 1960s, she found herself nearly unemployable. She developed a reputation for being quick-tempered on set, known to lash out at directors or belittle younger actresses who she feared were stealing her roles. Insiders whispered about her increasing dependence on alcohol, which left her unreliable and prone to erratic behavior, leading to more doors slamming shut. Her most devastating professional blow came when she was abruptly replaced in a high-profile television pilot, after only one episode, a humiliation that she carried with resentment for years. In her personal life, Jane lived a shadowed existence. She never married, and often confided to friends that men only ever wanted the caricature she played, not the vulnerable woman beneath. When she underwent heart surgery in 1994, complications ended her life on May 22nd of that year at age 76. She left behind an estate worth less than $1 million, consisting mostly of her apartment, a few investments and meager royalties, a cruelly modest legacy for someone who had given decades of her life to entertaining millions. Thank you for joining us on this nostalgic journey through classic television history. If you enjoyed learning about the cast of McHale's Navy 1962-1966 and where they are now, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe for more vintage Hollywood retrospectives, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing your memories and suggestions, so let us know which TV show or movie cast you'd like us to feature next.